Cool. Right. Let's do a walkthrough of the Burp Suite rooms finally. So, yeah, they've been sort of waiting to do the other ones before I cracked on with this, but it is finally time. So, let's make a move on. So, Burp Suite, the basics. Welcome to the Burp Suite basics room. This will cover the foundations of using the Burp Suite application. Specifically, we'll be looking at what Burp Suite is, an overview of the available tools in the framework, and installing Burp Suite, navigating and configuring Burp Suite. We'll also look into introducing the core of the Burp Suite framework, the Burp Proxy. The room is primarily designed to provide a foundational knowledge of Burp Suite, which can then be built upon further in the other rooms of the Burp module. As such, it will be a lot heavier in theory than subsequent rooms, which will take a more practical approach. You're advised to read the information here and follow along for yourself and copy of the tool if you haven't already used Burp Suite. Experimentation is key. Use this information in tandem with playing around with the app yourself to build a foundation for using the framework, which can be then built upon in the later rooms. Deploy the machine. Attached, there we go. By pressing the green start button as well as the attack box, which we're going to use this machine to my own attack box. If you're not using the attack box, you'll want to connect to this machine without the VPN. You can do so using this link once the machine has fully loaded. So if you are not using the attack box, want to connect to the machine without the VPN. Oh, so it's got like a public port on it anyway. Interesting. I think my VPN will be active anyway, so... Shut up, seagulls! Cool. So we have IP. Alright, what is Burp Suite? Put simply, the Burp Suite is a framework written in Java that aims to provide a one-stop shop for web application penetration testing. In many ways, this goal is achieved as Burp is very much the industry standard tool for hands-on web application security assessments. Burp Suite is also very commonly used when assessing mobile applications, as well as used when accessing mobile applications, as the same features which make it so attractive for web application testing translate almost perfectly into testing the APIs powering most mobile apps. At the simplest level, Burp can capture and manipulate all of the traffic between the attacker and web server. This is the core of the framework. After capturing requests, we can choose to send them to various other parts of the Burp Suite framework. We'll be covering some of these tools in upcoming rooms. This ability to intercept, view and modify web requests prior to them being sent to the target server, or in some cases the responses before they are received by our browser, makes Burp Suite perfect for any kind of manual web app testing. There are various different editions of Burp Suite available. We'll be working with the Burp Suite Community Edition, as this is free to use for any legal non-commercial use. The Burp Suite Professional and Enterprise editions both require expensive licenses but come with powerful additional features. Burp Suite Professional is an unrestricted version of Burp Suite Community that comes with features such as an automated vulnerability scanner, a fuzzer brute forcer that isn't rate limited, saving projects for future use, report generation, a built-in API that allows integration with other tools, unrestricted assets to add new extensions for greater functionality, access to the Burp Suite Collaborator, effectively providing a unique request catcher, self-hosted or running on PortSwigger on owned servers. In short, Burp Pro is an extremely powerful tool, which is why it comes with a £319, $399 price tag per user for a 1-year subscription. For this reason, Burp Pro is usually only used by professionals, with licenses often being provided by employers. Burp Suite Enterprise is slightly different. Unlike the Community and Professional editions, Burp Suite Enterprise is used for continuous scanning It provides an automated scanner that can periodically scan web apps for vulnerabilities, much in the same way as software like Nessus, automated infrastructure scanning. Unlike the other editions of Burp Suite, which allow you to perform manual attacks from your own computer, Enterprise sits on a server and constantly scans target web apps for vulnerabilities. Due to the prohibitive costs involved with either of these editions of Burp Suite, we will stick with the core feature set provided by Burp Suite Community. Note that Burp Suite for Windows is featured in the screenshots for many demonstrations. However, there is no difference between this and the copy of Burp Suite installed in the attack box or in the one on Kali Linux. As standard, which edition of Burp Suite will we be using in this module? Burp Suite Community. Which Burp Suite runs on a server and provides constant scanning? Burp Suite Enterprise. Burp Suite is frequently used when attacking web applications and mobile applications. Right, task 3. While the features of Burp Community. So while Burp Community has a relatively limited feature set compared to the Professional Edition, it still has many superb tools available. These include Proxy. The most well-known aspect of Burp Suite, the Burp Proxy allows us to intercept and modify request responses when interacting with web applications. Repeater is the second most well-known feature. Repeater allows us to capture, modify, and then resend the same request numerous times. This feature can be absolutely invaluable, especially when we need to craft a payload through trial and error, e.g. in a structured query language injection, or when testing the functionality of endpoint for flaws. Intruder, although harshly rate limited in Burp Community, Intruder allows us to spray an endpoint with requests. This is often used for brute force attacks or to fuzz endpoints. Decoder, although less used than the previously mentioned features, Decoder still provides a valuable service when transforming data, either in terms of decoding captured information or encoding a payload prior to sending it to the target. While there are other services available that do the same job, like CyberChef that we've used before, doing this directly within Burp Suite can be quite efficient. Comparer, as the name suggests, Comparer allows us to compare two pieces of data at either the word or the byte level. Again, this is not something that's unique to Burp Suite, but being able to do it, being able to send potentially very large pieces of data directly to a comparison tool with a single keyboard shortcut can speed things up considerably. And then finally, Sequencer. We can use the Sequencer when addressing the randomness of tokens such as session cookie values or other supposedly randomly generated data. The algorithm is not generating secure random values, and this could open up some devastating avenues for attack. In addition to the myriad of built-in features, the Java codebase also makes it very easy to write extensions to add to the functionality of Burp Suite. These are written in Java, Python using the Jython interpreter, or Ruby using the Java JRuby interpreter. The Burp Suite extender module can quickly and easily load extensions into the framework, as well as providing a marketplace to download third-party modules referred to as the BAP store. While many of these extensions require a professional license to download and add in, there is still a fair number that can be integrated with Burp Community. For example, we may wish to extend the inbuilt logging functionality of Burp Suite with the Logger++ module. Which Burp Suite feature allows us to intercept requests between ourselves and the target is Proxy. Which Burp tool would we use if we want to brute force a login form? That is Repeater. Or it could be the fuzzing one, Intruder. Let's do Intruder. Intrude. Yeah. Right, installation. Please note the attack box has already got Burp Suite installed. Please feel free to skip if you don't intend to install it. Again, Kali Linux has Burp installed locally as well, so we can just start it up. We don't need to do this bit. Right, so it just goes over the install. If you've chosen to not use the attack box, make sure you have a copy of Burp Suite, which we do. Okay. Dashboard. When we open Burp Suite, we have accepted the terms and conditions. We're met with a window asking us to select the project type. This window doesn't give us many options in Burp Community, but Pro would allow us to save our work to disk or load the previously saved project at this point. All we can do here is click Next. The next window allows us to choose a configuration for Burp Suite, leaving this as the default is perfect for most situations. Click Start Burp and the main Burp Suite interface will open. The next time you open Burp, you may be presented with a screen of training options. These are well worth reading through if you get the time. If not, and any subsequent session, regardless, you'll be presented with slightly daunting Burp dashboard. Don't be alarmed, this doesn't make too much sense just yet, it soon will. In short, the dashboard interface is split into 4 quadrants. You have number 1, which is the task menu. It allows you to define background tasks that Burp Suite will run while we use the application. Pro version would also allow us to create on-demand scans. The default live passive crawl, which automatically logs the page we visit, will be more than suitable for our usage in this module. Number 2, which is down bottom left, is the event log. Tells us that Burp Suite is doing what Burp Suite is doing, e.g. starting the proxy, as well as information about any connections that we're making through Burp. 3, top right, issue activity section is exclusive to Burp Pro. It won't give us anything using Burp Community, but in Burp Professional it would list all the vulnerabilities found by the automated scanner. These would be ranked by severity and filterable by how Burp is... filterable by how sure Burp is that the component is vulnerable. The advisory section gives more information about vulnerabilities found, as well as the references and suggested remediations. These could then be exported into a report. Clicking on one example vulnerability in the Issues Activity section gives us an idea of what this looks like. So you have an OS command injection, severity high, confidence, and like some extra information on it. Throughout the various tabs, windows of Burp Suite, you'll find little help icons, a question mark within a circle. Clicking on these will open a new window containing help for the section, for example. These are extremely helpful if you're ever stuck and don't know what a feature does. Make sure to make good use of them. Open Burp Suite and have a look around the dashboard and make sure you're comfortable with using it before moving on. So let's maximize that. So yeah, we just get the task and the event log. We lose the other two because they're for Pro. Let's go into Nav. So navigating around the Burp Suite GUI, let's actually go like left and right so we can keep it up. So if we navigate through the GUI, by default it's done using the top menu bars. These will allow you to switch between modules along the top row of the attached image. If the selected module has more than one sub-tab, then these can be selected using the second menu bar, which appears directly below the original, the bottom row of the image. It is common for module-specific settings to be provided in these sub-tabs, as is the case with the proxy options above. So let's go into proxy. Tabs can also be popped out into a separate window should you prefer to view multiple tabs separately. This can be done by clicking the window in the application menu at the top of the screen, then choosing to detach the tabs. Window, detach, so yeah, we can just pop any of these off. They can then be reattached in the same way. In addition to the menu bar, Burp Suite also has keyboard shortcuts that allow quick navigation by 2 key tabs. By default, these are Control-Shift-D goes to dashboard. Control-Shift-T goes to target. Control-Shift-P goes to proxy. Control-Shift-I goes to intruder. And Control-Shift-R goes to repeater. Cool. Options. Right, before we get started to learn about Burp Proxy, let's take a look at some of the options available for configuring Burp Suite. There is a global settings that can be found in the User Options tab along the top menu bar, and project-specific settings that can be found in the Project Options tab. The options provided in the User Options tab will apply every time we open Burp Suite. In contrast, the Project option will only apply to the current project. Given that we can't save projects in Burp Community, this means that our project options will reset every time we close Burp. There are far too many options to cover them all, so let's just look at the available categories and highlight a few of the more important settings as we start with the User Options tab. Let's just turn the music down a touch. Alright. So here we go, User Options. Hey Theo, how are you doing?
Theo says,
Hey MSec Burp Suite nice.
Give a shout out. Got an intruder on your stream. So yeah, we're just going through some of the Burp Suite basics. So those are the settings for user. Settings here apply globally. They control the Burp Suite application.
Good. Thanks for the so.
No worries, dude.
Small hacker.
Small hacker. So that said, many of them can be overwritten in the project settings. There are 4 main subsections of the User Options tab. The options in the Connections sub-tab allows us to control how Burp makes connections to targets. For example, we can set a proxy for Burp Suite to connect through. This is very useful if we want to use Burp Suite through a network pivot. I think JB uses Amazon as his pivot so that his IP locally doesn't get popped. The TLS sub-tab allows us to enable and disable various TLS options, as well as giving us a place to upload client certificates should a web app require one. For connections, an essential set of options display allows us to change how Burp Suite looks. The options here include things like changing font and scale, as well as setting the theme for the framework. I didn't know I had a dark mode. Theme. Oh yeah, let's go dark. Oh, that's so much better. Cool. Alright, the MISC sub-tab contains a wide variety of settings, including the key binding table hotkey, which allows us to view and alter the keyboard shortcut used by Burp Suite. Familiarizing yourself with these settings would be advisable, as using the keybinds can speed up your workflow massively. So, okay, yeah, so we just mentioned some of those earlier. Switch to proxy. Tab. Previous and next tab, minus equals. Cut and paste. Undo, redo. Select all. I mean, these are kind of basic text editing. What's that one? HTML decode and encode, so Control-Shift-H, Control-H. Base64 decode encode, Control-Shift-B, Control-B. Okay, that's useful to know.
Nightbot says,
you can change your TDS voice here. Web link.
With these options, we can customize our Burp install to suit our individual preferences. Let's move on and look at some of the project-specific configurations available within the Project tab. So there are 5 subtasks here. Connections hold many of the same options as the equivalent section in the User Options tab. These can be used to override the application-wide settings. For example, it is possible to set a proxy for just the project, overriding the proxy setting that you used in the User Options tab. There are very few differences between this sub-tab and that of the user options. However, for example, the host name resolution option, allowing you to map domains to IPs directly within Burp Suite, can be quite handy. As can the out-of-scope request setting, which enables us to determine whether Burp Suite will send requests to anything you aren't explicitly targeting. That's quite nice. So can you define some kind of rule, like a rule engine to say what's in and out of scope, and it just won't do that. HTTP. This subtab defines how Burp handles various aspects of the HTTP protocol, for example, whether it follows redirects or how to handle unusual response codes. Okay. TLS allows us to override application-wide TLS options, as well as showing us a list of public service certificates for sites that we've visited. Sessions. The Session tab provides us with options for handling sessions, allows us to define how Burp obtains, saves, and uses session cookies that it receives from target sites. It also allows us to define macros, which you can use to automate things such as logging into web apps, giving us instant authenticated sessions, assuming we have valid credentials. There are fewer options in the MSec tab, than in the equivalent tab for user options. Many of the options here are also only available if you have access to Burp Pro, such as the configuring collaborator. That said, there are a couple of options related to logging and the embedded browser, which we will look at in a couple of tasks that are well worth pursuing. Perusing. I need to start getting my eyes checked, I think, like this on the screen. Right, change the suite theme to dark mode. Okay, we did that anyway. In which project options subtab can you find reference to cookie jar? Let's say HTTP. Okay. Sessions. Yeah. In which user option subtab can you change the Burp Suite update behavior? It's going to be user, isn't it? It's the global. Oh, it's submenu. MSec. What is the name of the section within the user option MSec subtab which allows you to change the Burp Suite keybinds? Hotkeys. If we have uploaded client-side TLS certificates in the User Options tab, we can override these on a per-project basis. If they're in here, yes. Yeah, so we put them in this one instead. That's an I. There are many more configuration options available. Take time to read through them all. In the next section, we'll cover Burp Proxy and much more hands-on aspect of the room. Cool, so Proxy. Let's probably go Control-Shift-P. I'm going to use that all the time now. I didn't realise there was like tab keybinds. Right, Burp Proxy is the most fundamental and most important of the tools available in Burp Suite. It allows us to capture requests and responses between ourselves and our target. These can then be manipulated or sent to other tools for further processing. For example, if we make a request to tryhackme.com, through the Burp Proxy our request will be captured and won't be allowed to continue to TryHackMe servers until we explicitly allow it through. We can choose to do the same thing with our response from the server, although this isn't active by default. This ability to intercept requests ultimately means that we can take complete control of our web traffic, an invaluable ability when it comes to testing web apps. There are a few configurations we need to make before we can use the proxy. Let's start by looking at the interface. You do not need to follow along with this task, just read the information and understand the proxy is used for. When we first open the Proxy tab, Burp gives us a bunch of useful information and background reading. This example is well worth reading through, however the real magic happens after we capture a request. With the proxy active and a request was made to the TriHackMe website, at this point the browser making the request will hang. The request will appear in the Proxy tab, giving us a view shown in the screenshot above. We can then choose to forward or drop the request, potentially after editing it. We can also do various other things here, such as sending the request to one of the other Burp modules, copying it as a curl command, saving it to a file, and many others. When we have finished working with the proxy, we can click the Intercept is on button to disable the intercept, which will allow a request to pass through without being stopped. Burp Suite will still by default be logging requests made through the proxy when intercept is off. This can be very useful for going back and analysing prior requests. Even if we didn't specifically capture them when they were made, Burp will also capture and log WebSocket communication, which again can be exceedingly helpful when analysing a web app. The logs can be viewed by going to the HTTP history and the WebSockets history. It is worth noting that any requests captured here can be sent to other tools in the framework by right-clicking them and choosing send to ... For example, we could use the previous HTTP request that had already been proxied to the target and then send it to the repeater. Finally, there is a proxy-specific option we can use in the view in the Options tab. These options give us a lot more control over how the proxy operates, so it is an excellent idea to familiarise yourself with these. For example, the proxy will not intercept server responses by default unless we explicitly ask it to on a per request basis. We can override the default setting by selecting the intercept responses based on following rules checkbox and picking one of more rules. The all request was intercepted rule is good for catching responses to all requests that were intercepted by the proxy.
Sharma_G_ says.
Sub, how are you? Smile, smile.
I'm very good, thanks. How are you? I suppose we should probably look where these are. So, options. There we go. So the all request was intercepted. We enabled that one. We would capture all responses to all. We would capture responses to all requests that were intercepted by proxy. So this, if we stop the request first, we catch the server response. The AND URL is in target scope. Is another very good default rule. We'll look at scoping later in the room. You can make your own rules for most proxy options, so this is one selection we're looking around. And experimenting will serve you very well indeed. Another particularly useful section of this subtask is the match and replace section. This allows you to perform regexes on incoming and outgoing requests, such as you can automatically change your user agent to emulate different web browsers. In outgoing requests, to remove all cookies from being set. In incoming requests, again, you are free to make your own rules here. Weird, didn't read your message out. I'm having dinner, listening to your stream, won't be able to type, greasy hands, but I'll be back on the keyboard. Nice. Let's start the chat bot.
Connected to channel MSec.
There we go. Right. So which button would we choose to send an intercepted request to the target in Burp Proxy? It would be, let's go on to the proxy menu. Forward.
Sharma_G_ says.
The is the key to make it skip my message while reading.
Ah. Okay, yeah, I didn't realize that. So, like this might be.
Sneaky.
Got it. Oh, that's cool. Right, research. What is the default keybind for this? I'm gonna guess it's like Control-Shift-F or something. Oh, F. Alright, let's have a look. Forward intercepted proxy message, Control F. That's what I did. I guess I haven't captured anything. Control plus F. Alright, next one. Connecting through the proxy, Foxy Proxy. You've seen in theory, now it's time to start using the proxy for yourself. There are two ways to proxy our traffic through Burp Suite. We could use the embedded browser, we'll cover this in a later task, or we can configure our local web browser to proxy all traffic through Burp. This is more common and so will be the focus of this task. Burp Proxy works by opening a web interface on 127.0.0.1.80.80 by default. As implied by the fact that this is a proxy, we need to redirect all our browser traffic through this port before we can start intercepting it with Burp. We can do this by altering our browser settings, or more commonly using a Firefox browser extension called Proxy. Why would you use that though? Foxy Proxy allows us to save proxy profiles, meaning we can quickly and easily switch to our Burp Suite profile in a matter of clicks, then disable the proxy just as easily. All instructions were given with Firefox in mind, as this is the default browser for both Kali and TryHackMe. If you can't get the proxy working in your local browser and do not want to use the attack box, then you may skip ahead. I think we'll skip this one because, yeah, I've got no interest in using Foxy Proxy. Again, this isn't like, if we go preferences, there should be a proxy option down here anyway, so you can just set it up, you don't need an extension. Right there, we just manually set it up and type in 127.0.0.1.80.80. Like how hard is that?
It makes it easier to turn it off and beyond. All it is cause you will be toggling it off and on a lot.
Oh yeah. Right, then you can just use the browser one, right? Just have the pre-configured browser for it. Just don't see the point. Right, so yeah, do Foxy Proxy if you want. We're not gonna. Although there's questions on it, of course. The option in a drop-down submenu. Do I have to answer it? There is one particularly useful option which allows you to intercept and modify the response to your request. What is the option? Action? I don't know. So it's not mentioned. What the hell? I mean, is it? I can't tell what they mean by the option in a drop-down submenu. They do mean this one. Request in. Yeah, none of these match that star pattern, so. Modify the response to your request. Response to this request. What? That isn't any of them. So how do I get that to pop up?
Think it was in another submenu off the right-click menu.
That one. Do intercept a response to this request. Does that just give me like a one-time toggling of the capture the response? Yeah, okay. I mean, I've turned it on by default anyway, so it's kind of pointless. Okay. Try installing Foxy Proxy. No. Right, proxying HTTPS. So great, we can intercept HTTP traffic. What next? Unfortunately, there's a problem when we navigate to cancel. We navigate to a site with TLS enabled, we'll get an error. Specifically, Firefox is telling us that the port swigger certificate authority isn't authorized to secure the connection. Fortunately, Burp offers us an easy way around this. We need to get Firefox to trust connections secured by port swigger certs. So we'll manually add the CA certificate to our list of trusted certificate authorities. First, the proxy activated, head to Burp Cert. This will download a file called cacert.der. Save it somewhere on your machine. Next, type About Preferences into your Firefox search bar and press Enter. This takes us to the Firefox setting page. Search the page for certificates and find the option to view certificates. Clicking the View Certificates button allows us to see all of our trusted CA certificates. We can register a new certificate for PortSwigger by pressing Import and selecting the file that we just downloaded. In the menu that pops up, select Trust this CA to identify websites, then click OK. We should now be free to visit any TLS website that we wish. The following video shows the full import process. So they just browse to it at the end. Okay. If you're not using the attack box, configure Firefox or the browser of your choice to accept the PortSwigger CA certificate for TLS communication through Burp Proxy. Again, you don't need to do this. The browser is already set up to do this. So again, I don't see the point of getting you to set up all these extra proxy settings when you can just use the built-in browser. Like, do it the easy way. It's an intro box. You don't need additional extensions, you don't need anything extra, you can just keep it simple. If the last few tasks seem overly complex, rest assured this topic will be a lot simpler. In addition to giving us the option to modify our regular web browser to work with Proxy, Burp Suite also includes a built-in browser, Chromium browser that is pre-configured to use the proxy without any of the modifications we just had to do. While this may seem ideal, it is not commonly used as the process detailed in the previous few tasks. People tend to stick with their own browser as it gives them a lot more customizability. However, both are perfectly valid choices. I mean, I don't see the point. I would use Firefox and Chrome interchangeably, so it makes no difference to me. We can start Burp browser with the Open Browser button in the Proxy tab. Chromium window will pop up. Any requests we make there will go through the proxy. There are many settings to do with the Burp browser in the Project Options and the User Options tab. Make sure to look at them. If we are running on Linux as the root user, as we are with the attack box, Burp Suite is unable to create a sandbox environment to start the Burp browser in, causing it to throw an error and die. There are two simple solutions to this. The smart option, we could create a new user and run Burp with a low privileged account. Yes. The easy way is to go to the Project Options embedded browser and check the Allow embedded browser to run without sandbox. Do not accept the risk. Create a new user. Checking this option will allow the browser to start, but be aware that if this is disabled by default for security reasons, if we are compromised using the browser, then an attacker will get access to our entire machine. On the training environment of the attack box, this is unlikely and isn't a huge issue, even if it does happen. So keep in mind if you try this on your local installation of Burp Suite. Be aware that if you need to do this using the embedded browser on the attack box. So using the built-in browser, make a request to the IP. Let's renew it because it's running low. And I should re-enable intercept. There we go. Okay, and yeah, capture it in the proxy, so we've done that. Is that all we have to do? Surely it's going to get me to do something to it. Finally, we come to the most important part of using the proxy, scoping. It can get extremely tedious having Burp capturing all our traffic when it logs everything, including traffic to sites we aren't targeting. It muddies up the logs which we may wish to send to clients. In short, allowing Burp to capture everything can be quite a massive pain. The solution is scoping. Setting a scope for the project allows us to define what gets proxied and logged. We can restrict Burp Suite to only target the web applications we want to test. The easiest way to do this is by switching over to the Target tab. Yeah, let's see all the crap it's captured. Right-clicking our target from the list on the left and choosing Add to Scope. So Let's just release that one so it should show up in the target. There we go. Right click, add to scope. You have added an item to the target scope. Do you want Burp Proxy to stop sending out of scope information to the history of other Burp tools? Answering yes will avoid accumulating project data for out of scope. Yes. We can now check our scope by switching to the Scope subtab, which just has the IP in there now. The Scope subtab allows us to control what we are targeting by either including or excluding domains in the or IPs. This is a very powerful section, so it's well worth taking the time to get accustomed to using it. We can just choose to disable logging for out of scope, but the proxy will still be intercepting everything. To turn this off, we need to go into Proxy Options subtab and select and URL is in the target scope from the intercept client, which we'd already done. Guess you got to do it there as well, haven't you, on the intercept client. Okay. Okay, with this option selected, the proxy will completely ignore anything that isn't in scope, vastly cleaning up the traffic coming through Burp. Add the IP to your scope and change the proxy settings so only intercepted traffic to in-scope targets is accepted. See the difference between the amount of traffic getting caught and by the proxy before and after limiting the scope. So, can we clear this out? Clear history, yes. Okay, so where's my browser gone? So there's Bastion. I'll just refresh that. It will capture it. If we do another tryhackme.com, doesn't intercept it, doesn't stop it in any way, and it's not in the history, so it's all good. Right, sitemap and issue definitions. Control of the scope may be the most useful aspect of the target tab. It's by no means the only use for the section of Burp. There are 3 subtabs under target. Let's go back into target. Sitemap allows us to map out the apps we are targeting in the tree structure. Every page that we visit will show up here, allowing us to automatically generate a sitemap for the target simply by browsing around the web app. Burp Pro would allow us to spider the targets automatically, to look through every page for links and use them to map out as much of the site as publicly accessible. Using the links between pages, however, with Burp Community, we can still use this to accumulate data while we perform our initial enumeration steps. The sitemap can be especially useful if we want to map out an API, as whenever we visit a page, any API endpoints that the page receives data from while loading will also show up here. We've already looked at scope, and then issue definitions. So while we don't have Burp Suite vulnerability scanner in Burp Community, we do still have access to all the vulnerabilities it looks for. The issue definition section gives us a huge list of web vulnerabilities complete with descriptions and references which we can draw from should we need citations for a report or help describing a vulnerability. So if we take a look around the site, we'll be using this a lot throughout the module. Visit every page linked from the home page, then check the sitemap. One endpoint should stand out to be being very unusual. Okay. So let's clear out. Can I get rid of these? Let's just delete host. Yeah. Please tell me I can pick the lot. Here. Right. Get rid of all that crap. Right. So yeah, it's quite cool, isn't it? You get like a nice tree directory structure. Right. So let's get my window up. And let's just click around. So if we turn my intercept off, and then I want the target scope up. So as we go round, let's go home, about, contact, support, products. Got our products on there yet. Do any of these links do anything? Privacy, contact. Cool, so we're getting a few other things in there. What else we got? Anything in about? Okay, so each of these pages are separate. Let's click on all of them. Alright, submit a ticket. Got that. Okay. Alright, so we should, it said, have an endpoint that we can find. So we've got these are all just images, privacy, contact script, email filter. There's this endpoint, isn't there? So we've got some form URL encoding on 2 pages. Yeah. Contact. Strange that contact doesn't submit anything. Let's try that again. Yeah, see it. There's no data. Oh, we get a cookie back, session. Okay. That's a bit odd. It's the response section. These random ones. There's a repeater. Why is it? What? Just copy that. Just copy the text. Hey, cool. So yeah, we found some random endpoint, and then when you call it, you get a flag back. What is the typical severity of a vulnerable JavaScript dependency? So that was in issue definition. So now we want. Can you search these? No, you must be joking. JavaScript dependency, vulnerable JavaScript dependency. Okay, at least you can sort them alphabetically. It's a low. Cool. Alright, example attack. Having looked at how to set up and configure our proxy, let's go through the simplified real-world example. We'll start by taking a look at the support form. In a real-world app pen test, we would test this for a variety of things. One which would be the cross-site scripting or XSS. If you've not yet encountered XSS, it can be thought of as injecting client-side script, usually JavaScript, into the web page in such a way that it executes. There are various kinds of XSS. The type that we'll be using here is referred to as reflected cross-site scripting, as it only affects the person making the web request. So try typing that script into the contact email field. You'll find out that there is a client-side filter in place which prevents you from adding any special characters that aren't allowed in email addresses. So let's do it on that side. Let's turn my proxy off as well. For now at least. And we want the ticketing service.proceed support. Okay, right, so we put that in and it filters it. So please include an @ in the email. It's just annoying. Please enter part of the following @ dot. try hack me. Something like that, maybe. The part followed by @ should not contain the symbol forward greater than. Right, okay, so it doesn't allow anything in the front of it, so... Right, okay. Fortunately for us, client-side filters are absurdly easy to bypass, as there are a variety of ways we could disable the script, or just prevent it from loading in the first place. Let's focus on simply bypassing the filter for now. First, make sure the proxy is active. And we turned it off. Just tinker with it. And the intercept is on. Now enter some legitimate data into the form. For example, pentest@example.thm as the email and test attack as a query. Okay. So yeah, now we capture it. To submit the form, the request should be intercepted by the proxy. With the request captured in the proxy, we can now change the email field to be our simple payload from above. So now we can circumvent any filtering. And I don't need that stuff. Okay. After pasting in the payload, we need to select it with the URL and encode it. And if it scrolls over, yeah, Control U is the shortcut to make it safe to send. So if we select our new text, Control U, and it's not sodding doing anything. Or is it? Okay, yeah, it does. It just puts in the pluses, right? Okay, so it did do it. Finally press forward to send. Successful XSS, there we go. So congratulations, you bypassed the filter. Don't expect it to be quite so easy in real life, but there could be. It should hopefully give you an idea of the kind of situation that Burp Proxy can be useful. So the room conclusion. Let's turn that off. So you've now reached the end of the Burp Basics room. This room has hopefully given you a good grasp of the Burp Suite interface and configuration options, as well as giving you knowledge of the Burp Proxy. You're advised to experiment with these foundations until you're completely comfortable with them. Burp Suite is an invaluable tool in the web or mobile application pen tester's arsenal. We'll be building on these skills in the next room, which will be covering the Burp Suite repeater. I think that's this one, which it is, yeah, nice. Cool. Have we missed a question? Yes. There we go, that's better. Cool, right, that room is done.